Do you have an interview coming up? Are you concerned about questions? Both the questions that you will be asked and the questions that you should ask towards the end of your interview when they ask you that question. Do you have any other questions? So that is the purpose of today's video, and I'm delighted to take you through the 5 different categories of question that an interview may ask you. And if you just ignore my little puppy who's snorting and tap dancing in the background, that would be great. So the first set of questions that you might be asked are general questions. So these are the questions for them to begin to get to know a little bit about you, and they'll start off seemingly easy and they will get progressively harder. So you will be asked undoubtedly some sort of tell me about yourself question, and hopefully you have prepared a short 30 second to a minute kind of quick blurb just to set the scene about you. You don't need to go through your entire CV or resume, they have that in front of them, but this just sets the scene, and they can always dive in a little more if you say something that they want to dig into. Then they're going to ask you some questions about the organization. So do your due diligence ahead of time, know about the company, maybe the department you're working for, maybe the people you will be working with, but be prepared to answer what you know about the organization or the university or the research institute or whatever it is, wherever that you are interviewing. And then why do you want to work for this company, or why do you want this particular role? And then it might go into your suitability for the job. So why are you right for this job? What do you think that you can bring to this role? What separates you from other candidates? What are your skills or ideas that, will absolutely mean that the job is yours? And then we might be getting into questions about more about digging more into you. So what is your greatest achievement, or what are your top 3 achievements or accomplishments that you're most proud of? What do you think that you might be doing in 5 years' time? Where do you see yourself? Is that progressing in the company, or they're trying to see longevity. If they give you this role, are you going to stick it out? You're going to have that nasty little one. What are your strengths or weaknesses? And we can get into how you're gonna answer that. I know a long time ago we would say that you should say, I'm a perfectionist, it's hard for me to let things go. But I think interviewers have got pretty savvy now, and so they want a realistic answer. So maybe you're talking about something that is a real weakness and you're actually working on it, or maybe you've turned it into a strength. It used to be a weakness and you have worked on it. So maybe getting a finalized product, or meeting a deadline, or giving professional or speaking in public, something like that. Let them know that there is something that you have worked towards, you have achieved it. I'm so sorry. Will you stop that, please? So let's think about your answer. And this is something that you can think of ahead of time. So, write a list of potential responses to strengths and weaknesses. And then maybe, do you have any skills that you can potentially bring to this role which aren't in the job description? What is your communication style? What is your management or leadership style? How do you handle competing priorities and deadlines? What do you like under stress? Things like that. So general questions, setting the scene. What do you like as an individual? Because remember, you can probably do the job. If they've brought you in, you have the skill set presumably to do the job. They want to know, are you the sort of person that they want to work with? Because there's probably a number of people who can do it, but they're trying to find a fit for their team, for the company, for whatever reason it is. So these are setting the scene. Then they might dive into some situational questions. which are hypothetical. So what would you do in this circumstance? So, there's a problem, and we need you to fix it. There's maybe a communication error, whatever it is. So this is not something that you can necessarily prepare ahead of time, because you don't know what they're going to ask you. But they're literally going to watch you problem solve this in real time. So you can just take a breath, think for a moment. A short pause is perfectly acceptable in an interview, and then you can logically answer the question. The next set are behavioral questions. And these are going to be asking you, have you done this? Tell me about a time, describe something. So the main idea behind this is that your best predictor of your future success is what you have done in the past, which isn't necessarily true. We can all learn new things. We can, improve and do better. But they are going to be asking you to give examples, and very specific examples, for things that you have achieved in the past. So some of these would be maybe, tell me about a time when you were in a leadership position. Give me an example of a problem and how you solved it. Tell me a time when you've persuaded others to adopt your ideas. Describe some specific goals that you set for yourself and how you achieved them, and maybe what factors led to that success. Tell me about a time when you failed, and maybe failed to meet a deadline or just failed in general, and what were the repercussions? What did you learn from that experience? Tell me about a time when you work with a difficult person. That's a key one. They want to know if you can work with difficult personalities, that sort of thing. And so this is where you can really set the scene, and you should probably prepare a few answers going into the interview. You know that there's going to be some sort of give me an example of problem solving, risk-taking, leadership, collaboration, managing difficult individuals, a success. So you can think about this before you go in, and you need a few different examples, right? You can't use the same example to show leadership, and then this is the same one for success, and then the same one for this is, I was a leader when we problem solved. Like, you need a few different examples which you can kind of bring out and discuss with the interviewer. And the next video is going to be about how I suggest you tackle answering these questions using something called the STAR method. And that is going to be, you describe the situation, you describe the task that needed to be achieved, you discuss the actions that were taken, and you talk about the results. And then you can also add on to that and say, from this experience, I have learned these things. I like the STAR method of answering questions, and I think this particular one in the behavioral section, this is a great way that you can utilize it. So just think ahead of time of like 6 or 7 different examples, which you can kind of mix and match depending on what the question is. Now, there's probably going to be some technical or skills questions in here, especially if you're in the STEM field. So I know a professor who, regardless of who she's interviewing, whether it's a summer intern all the way through to postdoc, lab manager, she will ask them to perform a molarity calculation in front of her during the interview. And so this absolutely tells her very clearly what should be sort of a basic level lab skill, whether you can do it under pressure, right in front of her, right at that moment. It tells her that if she hires you, can you do this on day one? As a postdoc, I absolutely hope you can do this. As a graduate student, probably would expect you to be able to do this as well. As a summer intern, potentially not. But this is just one of her quirks. She always does it. But maybe there's something about software that you use or a skill that you're going to use that they can kind of drill into and make sure that, yes, it's on your CV or resume. Can you actually do it? And then finally, of the questions that you will be asked, they're the unpredictable or brain teaser kind of fun ones. And these, I think, are really, they're special. I kind of look forward to asking these questions if I'm interviewing someone. And unless you're doing a brain teaser where you're asking them a riddle or it's a logic question, there is really no right answer. So these are going to be your questions of, if you could meet anyone in history, who would you meet and why? Or if you were a piece of fruit, what would you be and why? And obviously, probably nobody's thought, if I was a fruit, what would I be? So you're literally going to be seeing them kind of be logical, but use some creativity and do some problem solving right then and there in front of you. So maybe they're going to choose their favorite fruit, or maybe there's something which is very obvious for the position that they're going for. So one person I know was being interviewed to be the chair of a department in a hospital, and she was asked this question. And she said that she wanted to be an avocado because everybody loves avocado. You can make a guacamole. Everyone loves like guac and chips. And an avocado is just like a super fun thing. The person she competed against said that he would be an apple because an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So, you are a medical doctor, aren't you witty? But again, they both gave acceptable answers, right? They picked a fruit and they went for it. So again, unless it is the riddle where you are going to have to kind of logically try and figure it out, there shouldn't be any wrong answer. I mean, obviously, don't pick someone awful. if you're meeting someone from history, you probably don't want to pick a dictator or anything like that. Maybe you want to meet a very well-known, respected scientist, Rosalind Franklin, just to find out what she really thought about the DNA chaps who stole her research. Maybe you want to meet Sir Isaac Newton. You want to talk about him watching the apple fall to the ground. Whatever it is, there needs to be a reason behind it. And as long as you can explain it, there really is no way for them to say that was a bad answer. The only thing they can kind of fail you for is the lack of logic behind your reasoning. So again, you can't prepare for these ones. You're going to have to literally go with it in the moment. And you might think afterwards, I could have done so much better. Don't panic. Everyone else is being asked these same questions. A lot of the time they've decided we're going to ask all the candidates these behavioural questions so they can compare and contrast you directly from your answers. And then, if you all get asked what kind of fruit you are, then, afterwards there might be a really fun discussion of, I really like this person because she said she wanted to be a banana because it was her favourite fruit, or whatever it is. There just needs to be a reason. So now you have got through to the end of the interview, and obviously, hopefully this has been a discussion. You're talking with your interviewer, and maybe you've been asking questions as you go. But at the end, they will always say, do you have any questions for us? And that is not the point where you say, no, I've got everything. I'm good. This is where you need to have some questions to show, yes, I'm still interested in the role. And I've definitely put some thought into it. So the first question you're going to ask is going to be some version of, what is the next step in your hiring process? When should I expect to hear from you, or should I contact you in a certain time frame? What are the next steps? Because you don't want to leave and then a couple of weeks later think, I haven't heard anything back from the company. But if they're still interviewing and that's going to be going over the next month, that's fine. But if you don't know that, you're panicking, thinking, did I really mess that up? I might have lost that opportunity. So first question, what are the next steps? And then you can get into some of the sort of more interesting questions for you. So that might be something along the lines of, what does the first month look like? What am I going to receive training? What are your expectations for me within the first month, 6 months to a year? Am I going to have concrete goals that you want me to hit? Is there going to be a lot of teamwork or project work? Am I going to be working on my own, or am I going to be working more collaboratively? You might want to ask them to describe what their department is like, what their management or leadership style is like, to make sure that it meshes with you. You might want to ask about what they like about the company and what they like about their role. And that could be an interesting one, because if they sit there like a deer in the headlights going, "Ooh, I don't know if I do," then that might tell you a little bit about whether you want to work for this company. Because remember, you're interviewing them at the same time. Yes, you might really badly want a paycheck, but you also don't want to go and work for a company that you don't particularly want to work for, especially if you're leaving a position which you're quite comfortable in. You don't have to necessarily leave it. So make sure that you ask those questions. Maybe you want to know why the job is open. Or, maybe you've seen that there's been a little bit of turnover in the department, and you might want to ask, is there an issue? Maybe that isn't how you word it, but you want to kind of dig into, why is this open? Why has there been turnover? Why isn't anyone sticking in this position? That sort of thing. Maybe you want to ask them if they have any concerns for the department, the company, the way things are going, especially if you've done some research and you notice maybe there's a funding issue coming up, just so that you are aware of that in the future. So there is a document. I have written some of the questions that you might expect. I've broken them down into the 5 different categories that you might be asked, and then I've put some questions up there as well that you should also ask. So you can go along to my website and download those questions, and check back next week to look for the star interview response or answers that I will be putting up. So thank you for joining me today at Educated STEM. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.